Hi, I'm Sam Candy and welcome to Sustain Talks. Today I'm joined by Joe Hand, co-founder of Giki. Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit more about Giki, why you started it and your background as well?
Oh, well, thanks for having me, Sam. It's really good to be here. I set up Giki, which stands for Get Informed, Know Your Impact. We set it up in 2017 with my husband, James, to help people live more sustainably. That was really our guiding principle and what we wanted to do when we set the organization up. And the reason we felt that there was a real need for what we do is because more and more people are concerned about the environment, want to do what they can to try and stop climate change in particular, but also concerned about broader environmental crises that we're facing, and didn't know what they could do personally or individually. So we thought if we can help people understand what their own personal impacts on the environment are and what they can do to have a positive impact, then we can really help close that gap between people's concern and people wanting to take action but not really knowing what to do. So that was very much our starting point. And we also wanted to be positive and empowering and enable people to make their own decisions rather than being judgmental or making people feel bad, because I think sometimes that can be really off-putting. People are concerned about the environment, they want to take action, then if you feel that, well, I'm not doing enough, or what I'm doing isn't the right thing, that can be really demotivating. So I think by enabling everybody to see information and find changes that they can make that are right for them and their own lifestyle and their own priorities, we feel that that's the best way to enable the mass behavior change that we need to achieve to deal with the climate crisis that we're facing, because about 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions actually come from us as individuals and households. So the potential for us to make a real difference is massive. And I think there's often not that realization among many people that the power of individuals, particularly together, is huge in terms of dealing with the climate crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. I so agree with you as well. I'm not a vegetarian, but I have significantly reduced the amount of meat I eat. And funnily enough, I just had a plant burger for lunch. But I think that's so right, putting it into other people's hands and not forcing them to say, right, you have to completely cut out meat, but giving them the insight and the help to reduce their impact. So tell me, what kind of emissions does Giki calculate then?
So we look at, through Giki Zero, we look at all of our individual carbon footprint based on what we consume. So we actually split it out into different lifestyle areas. So our homes, where we're talking about things like heating, hot water, that kind of thing, electrics. Travel, how we get about, so cars, planes, tube, buses, etc. Biking, if you're going for the low carbon option. And we look at our diets, which can make up about a quarter of our personal carbon footprint. And then we also look at stuff that we buy and services that we buy. So stuff that we buy is really anything from clothes, bathroom stuff, that kind of thing. And services could be our bank account or pensions, holidays, that kind of thing. And what we really aim to do is cover everything that we have direct control over, so that we can then make changes that are going to fit with our lifestyle and our budget.
Yeah. So how do you measure those emissions then? Do you just sort of take the average person? How does it work?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And I think it very much, so we approach it, we use a lot of different data sources, things like largely government sources, academic and scientific research are our main sources of data. And we want to make it so that you can put in as much or as little information as you want. So some people love to get super detailed. So for example, you could go into Giki Zero, which is you can get online or use it on your phone. And put in your electricity meter readings, for example. You could put in every single type of food that you eat. You could put in how much you've saved in your pension. You can put in your breed of dog, and then it will give you your dog's carbon footprint. But some people love putting in lots of really detailed information. Some people just want to get straight to the action. You know, what can I do to actually make a change to my life today? And they just want to put in a few bits of information. So you could also just say, look, I live in this type of house, I drive a car. You can have, you know, very high level information. So basically there are 3 layers of information that you can include. You can go for the UK average, or the country average that you're in, that you opt to be in. You can go for an estimate where you'd say, you know, my type of diet is, you know, part vegetarian, for example. Or you can go for the real detailed information where you put in every type of food that you eat. And it's horses for courses. We're all different, and some people do a bit of both. Others would just go for, you know, the estimates to keep it quick and easy.
I did mine at the beginning of the year, and it was really high, but I know why it was high, because I had to buy a new laptop and I had to buy a new sofa after having mine for like 17 years. So, you know, it's when you get into that detail, you find it's more interesting, and then you can strip out things that you maybe didn't realize were high emissions. What do you think, in your view, are the biggest emitters?
So it does vary person to person. Unfortunately, it's not a kind of one size fits all. Because, for example, if you live in a small flat in a city that's modern and well insulated, but you fly a lot, your lifestyle changes would be very different than somebody who lives in a sort of drafty house in the middle of the country, but doesn't travel much. So, but in a nutshell, I would say looking at your travel is a really important one. You know, particularly flying is, in terms of you know, single journeys, by far the biggest impact. But often, actually, if you drive a lot in your car, that can have a very big impact as well. So looking at travel, looking at your home, you know, how well insulated is it? Does it use renewable electricity? That's a really good one. Renewable electricity. That's really become a no-brainer, because it really doesn't need to cost anymore now. And then what we eat. So if you're vegetarian or mainly plant-based, you'd have you know, your carbon footprint from your diet would be almost half of the carbon footprint of a regular diet. So generally, our homes, how we get about, and what we eat, those tend to be the biggest part of our personal carbon footprint. And very roughly, they're about a quarter each. And then things like goods and services that we buy would make up the rest. But it does vary person by person. So that's why we've decided with Giki to help people work out what their own personal impacts are, and then they can find the changes that are right for them.
Yeah, I think it is that education, isn't it? Because once people understand it and realize it, it then helps them to make those decisions. It's really hard. Like, you know, when you think of what does CO2 mean, people just don't have a concept of, you know, you can't see it, you can't measure it. So I think that really, really helps. I know you're part of Climate Tech Council. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that's about?
Yeah, no, it's really exciting, fairly recently formed, and it's really to bring together founders and investors and others in the climate tech community to drive collective impact and increase discussions with policymakers, and really help build knowledge across the whole sector, because it's a really interesting group of people who have a, you know, massive range of technologies that they're working on. So a lot of them would be very much, you know, business to business, a fewer more business to consumer, but a real range of technologies, and a lot going through similar challenges actually being able to support each other and share how we've resolved many of these challenges in the arena of trying to get to net zero by 2050 or before. And what some of those challenges are policy ones, some of them are broader barriers, but it's really about accelerating the role of climate tech in the UK.
Yeah, I think that's it's such an important group, and I really believe that there's technology that is coming that we don't even know about yet that is going to help us in the future. Meeting people in the group, have you seen some technology that's coming? What do you think is going to help tackle climate change?
Yeah, I was thinking about this before we spoke, and there are some really fascinating approaches, for example, around data and transparency. So looking at using data to help all sorts of different organizations really understand their exposure to climate change as it currently is. And I think the role of data in driving transparency through supply chains and and helping people understand, both people and businesses, what they're actually buying is going to be a really important part of the future. And I think we're already starting seeing that play out with just the general public being more interested in who makes their products, where they come from, are they made in a way that they feel comfortable with, but also there's some really exciting technologies that are already here, like electric vehicles, which there's more and more coming out with amazing ranges now. I was talking to somebody the other day who's a new model that's come out that's got range of 250 miles, which is totally different to what was available a few years ago. The infrastructure still needs to improve to keep keep supply for people available across the country. But I think that, and the combination of the change in the way that we're going to live in our homes is really important. So things like heating, moving away from gas boilers to air source heat pumps. It's quite unusual at the moment for somebody to have an air source heat pump in their home, but in 5 or 10 years' time, that's likely to be the way that we're all heating our homes and our water. So I think there's a combination of the kind of really out there technologies that are yet to be proven, like low emissions flights, for example, which is such a crucial part of the puzzle. And there's a lot
sustainable aviation fuel. Yeah,
exactly. There's a lot of work still to be done there, but the technologies that are already here that just need to have cost parity so that they're available to everybody, and it needs to be easier for people to actually get them installed, and they need to be able to afford to do that.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that by more people using those products, then it's going to drive the price down, because at the moment the price of an electric vehicle is so high, but as it's used, in 5 years it's going to be so different to it is now, and it will be so much more accessible. It was an interesting year, 2021, for everyone. Second year of the pandemic, and for some a really difficult year, for some a year of discovery. What's been the biggest lesson that you learned in 2021?
Well, we launched Giki Zero in the first year of the pandemic, which you saw almost lose track of the years.
Yeah, I know.
In May 2020. And it's actually so all of the work that we've done around Giki Zero has been, or certainly since it was launched, has been the pandemic has been with us. But I think that what we've learned in 2021 actually is relevant, pandemic or not, really. I think and very much from a climate perspective and a sustainability perspective. And I think this was particularly clear in the pushback that came out through COP26 from campaigners, that commitments are not enough. We need to see action. And I think that plays out in every single part of the challenges around climate change. political commitments need to deliver action, business commitments need to deliver action, and our own personal commitments need to do the same. And I think that that's really important. But equally, and again, I think this is relevant to all those groups, but probably particularly relevant to individuals, it needs to be easy, and it needs to be, people need to feel that it's fair. So, and we're seeing that, you know, in some of the political debates at the moment in terms of the price rises that we're witnessing in the energy sector. People need to feel that the changes that we're all going to need to make to our lives to achieve the emissions cuts that are totally necessary are in some cases quite costly, but in other cases they actually help save money. But where they are costly, for example, the electric vehicles, for example, there needs to be some sort of policy intervention, as we've seen actually with diesel and petrol cars being banned from 2030, that will help drive price reductions and affordability in the new technologies that we need to see. So I think that's, yeah, so commitments are not enough, and ease and fairness in terms of the transition to low carbon technologies is crucial. And I think that's certainly you know, been really highlighted by the youth campaigners, that this idea of climate justice, or, you know, the fact that the burden is shared in a way that is fair.
Yeah.
And achievable.
Yeah, it's a new year, 2022. Always a good start to set new goals. Have you yourself, have you set any New Year's resolutions, or do you have any exciting goals that you want to share?
Well, I actually usually do set New Year's resolutions, but I didn't this year. I asked my kids if they could recommend any, and they said, well, Mummy, maybe just don't shout at us so much. So I'm trying to go for that one. But in terms of where we're going as an organisation, I think it's so important now for individuals and businesses to really see this as a high priority, because the more we do now, the less the devastation or the devastating effects will play out in the future. And we work with a lot of companies who use Giki Zero, companies and organisations actually, so community groups, universities, the whole spectrum of organisations who use Giki Zero to help staff understand and reduce their own personal carbon footprints. And it's just it's very heartening that so many organisations now see this as an increasing priority, because at the end of the day, it's such an important part of future-proofing an organisation to have sustainability embedded in you know, many of the priorities and the way that people operate, and actually helping your staff understand why that's so important. It's really a crucial part of the puzzle, and I think more and more organisations are really embracing that now, which is really exciting.
Yeah, it really is, and I totally agree. You must meet in your groups and your network, you must meet some very inspiring people, but who inspires you, or what books do you recommend that you enjoy on the topic?
So I was lucky enough to contribute to a really great list, and I'll share the link with you, that was compiled by Deloitte, called the Light Bulb List, which was a whole spectrum of climate related books that were recommended by lots of different experts. And the one that I really enjoyed was Hope in Hell by Jonathan Porritt, because I think that it really told it how it is. You know, he's been working in this space for many decades, but with a combination of reality as to the gravity of the situation, but a very clear data and research driven angle in terms of, we can resolve this. You know, this is not an insurmountable problem, and it really is all about prioritization. So that's definitely a book I'd recommend, and I'll send you the link for the others as well, because there are lots of really, really excellent books out there that are just such a great way to learn more, but also, you know, encourage other people to think about these issues as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Jonathan Porritt's amazing. He's doing such fantastic work with rewilding, with his project Bunlight Rewilding. Thank you, Joe. I think the work that you're doing is so important, educating people on carbon emissions, on climate change. And, you know, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And, you know, best wishes and good luck with Giki. And I'm sure it's going to be very, very successful and everyone should hear about it. So thanks for your time today.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It's really good to be here. Really good to talk.
Okay, bye-bye.